My first class is arithmancy, and the A in that class is to read a book that ends in an even number. Hello everybody, my name is Kelsey. We're about to get very, very nerdy with a magical TBR. So it is almost August, which means it is almost time to start the part 2 of the magical readathon, the NEWT examinations, and I am so excited. If you guys have no idea what I'm talking about, I will leave all of the information down below from G from Book Roast. This is her readathon based on the Harry Potter tests that they take at Hogwarts. You take your first part in April and then you take the second part in August, or the NEWTs. This year's a slightly different, which is she created a bunch of careers, and based on those careers you had like certain subjects that you had to pass and that kind of thing. So I decided that I wanted to be a metal charmer, which was fine and it was great, and I like did what I needed to do for that to pass my owls. But I didn't think about it when it came to my NEWTs, because I'm gonna have to read 12 books. So for each subject there are 3 different book challenges based on the grades. So you have A, E, and O for acceptable, exceeds expectations, and outstanding. And based on what your career is, you have to get certain grades in these subjects. So I do have to take 5 subjects, and 3 of those 5 subjects I have to read all 3 books. So that's gonna be fun. I tried to do a variety of audiobooks and not like super thick books, but now that I'm looking at my lists, don't think I did as good as I thought I did, but I'm just really excited to read a lot of these, and I found a lot of these on audiobooks, so that should help a bunch, and let's just go. So my first class is arithmancy, and to get an A in that class I have to read a book that ends in an even number. So I'm going to be reading Bad Girls Throughout History by Anne Shin. Now this is on my list of books, like 12 books that I wanted to read by the end of the year, so I really wanted to get this one in. And it's not like a super complex book because it's literally just like a bunch of women, so I'm feeling like I should be able to get through that pretty quickly. But this one ends on an even number, and I was trying to fit as many of those on that list of 12 in this as I could. To get an E in this class, you have to read a standalone, so I'm going to be reading The Loneliest Girl in the Universe by Lauren James. This follows a girl named Romy who is literally alone in the universe. She was on a spaceship with her parents, but her parents unfortunately died, and she's drifting away from Earth, and her only connection to Earth is like sparing chats with her therapist. But she finds out that NASA is sending another ship, and so she starts contacting the commander of that ship, and they spark up a friendship, but his mission might not be quite what she thinks it is. So I'm really excited to get to this one. Got like chats in here between her and her therapist and her and this other commander, so I'm excited to get a little bit of mixed media in this and see what this is about. And to receive an O in arithmancy, I have to read a book that is longer than 350 pages, so I'm going to be reading Diplomatic Immunity by Brody Ashton. This one was also on that list of 12 books that I wanted to read by the end of the year, which I'll link down below or something if you guys want to check that one out. This follows a girl named Piper who is in DC and is training to become a journalist and is part of an internship. And the key to like one of the biggest stories is the son of the Spanish ambassador. But this son of the Spanish ambassador just happens to drop into her room one night asking for help. So it seems like it's going to be like this rom-com book. I'm excited, and I've read some stuff by Brody Ashton before, but it was all the My Plain Jane, My Lady Jane, that series, so I'm intrigued to see what her writing is like not combined with the others. So this one has exactly 352 pages, so it just barely skirts the 350 limit. My next class is Charms, and to get an A in that class I have to read a book with a gorgeous cover. Now this was really hard for me because I had like a bunch of different options, but then I finally found this one in one of the boxes when I was unpacking, and I forgot I had it, and that is Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, the illustrated edition. I wanted to read all of these books by the end of this year, and considering it is almost August and I haven't started, isn't a good sign. And I know I put like one of the Harry Potters on my list back in April and didn't read it, so I'm hoping that by putting this on here again I can hopefully start this series. I'm hoping to listen to the audiobook and read it physically at the same time, because there is such like amazing artwork in this, and it's just like gigantic. But I've also never actually listened to the audiobooks for Harry Potter, and they're supposed to be pretty good. I'm excited to hopefully dive into this one again and immerse myself in the world, because I've missed it, and there's definitely a lot about the books that I don't remember because I've watched the movie so many times and I want to refresh myself on what is actually in the original text. So this is my gorgeous cover because it's so pretty. So to get an E in this class, you have to read a graphic novel or a manga, and I actually only have one option for this, and that is Bloom. I am so excited about this one. It's about like two boys who fall in love around a bread shop. The art style is amazing. It's just in this like blue kind of color scheme, which I'm intrigued by, like why that color scheme. So I'm hoping to get into it. It is a pretty chunky one, but as I'm flipping through it, I'm realizing there's not a whole lot of dialogue. It's a lot of pictures. And I'm really excited that I could get like one in, because this is my one and only graphic novel for this readathon. To get an O in Charmed, you have to read a paperback. So I'm going to be reading The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. I've had this for quite a long time. I had a couple friends in college that really adored this book, and so I've had it forever. And I really want to read Circe, which is also on this list. We'll get to that in a second. And that's on my list of 12 books that I want to read. It doesn't really have anything to do with one another. It doesn't have an order. I really wanted to read this one first because this one came out first. So I put this one on here, and I have an audiobook of this. So I'm really excited to dive in. So this follows, obviously, Achilles, right? As that time when it was kind of in the Iliad when he was going to war, but it really follows him and his best friend Patroclus, and they seem to have created some kind of romance. I've heard the ending is so sad because it's obviously the ending which is in the Iliad, so like that's not really a spoiler and I know what's gonna happen, but it's still a different take on it, and I'm really excited to see how she's gonna write this. The next class that I'm taking is Transfiguration, and to get an A in that class you have to read a book with LGBTQIA+ representation, and so I'm going to be reading Birthday by Meredith Russo. I love her. I've talked about her other book, If I Was a Girl, so many times on this channel, and this is her new one that just came out like this month or last month. And I finally got my hands on it. It took me like 3 trips to the bookstore, but I finally got it, and I'm really excited because it does include trans representation. It follows these two best friends, Eric and Morgan, and they both kind of have the same birthday, and they've been friends since they were like fetuses, and they kind of drift apart, and one of them, I think, transitions during this book, so I'm intrigued to see how their relationship becomes what it will be. And it even says right here, a love story 18 years in the making. So who knows what that's gonna be, but I loved Meredith Russo's last book, and honestly she's kind of like an auto-author for me at this point, so I will read anything that she writes, and so I'm so excited about this book. To get an E in Transfiguration, you have to read a book that's not the first in a series. So I'm going to try to read Two Dark Reigns by Kendara Blake. This is the third in the Three Dark Crowns trilogy. This series follows 3 sisters, each with separate powers, and they are triplets, and they have to basically fight to survive, to be like the last one to rule this world that they're living in. I'm excited to see what the next step is, because it's going places. The next challenge and last challenge in Transfiguration is the O challenge, and that is to read a book over 500 pages. Now, that's a lot. I chose The King's Curse by Philippa Gregory. This is the next book in her like series that I have. There's not really an order, but I've been trying to read them in order, like how she suggests to read them based on like history. So this is the next one, and it follows King Henry VIII, like that time period, more like the Tudor England. We're starting to get more into that time period, and this has, I believe, like exactly like 600 pages in it, and it's ridiculous. Like, it's long. Yeah, 604 pages. I don't know if you can see that, but that's a long book. My next class that I have to do is Defense Against the Dark Arts, and I only have to read the first book, the one that counts as an A, but I did find for all 3, just in case for some crazy reason I needed other options. To get an A in that class, you have to read a book that has a black hardcover under the cover. And so I'm going to be reading Circe by Madeline Miller. I just really like Greek mythology, and I'm really intrigued to see her takes on the 2 stories that I have from her in this readathon. And like I said, this one is on that 12 books I want to read by the end of the year. So try to knock out as much of those as I can. But yes, this one obviously follows the myth of Circe, and I'm really intrigued, and I just love the cover. It's so pretty. So that's what I'm going to be reading as my A book. Now, if I have time to it, like I said, I'll get to the next two, but for E, it's going to be the first book that you remembered from your TBR, and it was just like the first one that came to your brain when you like read that. And for me, that was The 48 by Donna Hose. This is a kind of a time travel novel, but it goes back to King Henry VIII's time. These two brothers come and their like mission is to assassinate King Henry VIII. I'm really intrigued because it does have like more modern elements to it with the time travel, but it's still set in that time period that I absolutely adore. So to receive an O in Defense Against the Dark Arts, you have to read a book that is set in England or by an English author. So I'm going to be doing Voices, The Final Hours of Joan of Arc by David Eliot. Now, this is not written by an English author, but it is about Joan of Arc, so England. It's like a lyrical format, and it's really like he's looked at like the historical documents from the trials of Joan of Arc and taken some of the stuff that was in that and put that in this book. I'm really excited about this one. If I have time to sneak one more in, I can sneak this one in. So my last class is Ancient Runes, and I only have to read 2 out of the 3 books here, which is good. And the first one is to read a book recommended by a friend. So I will be reading Peter and the Starcatchers by Dave Barry and Ridley Pearson because my husband has been trying to get me to read this book for years, and I just never got around to it. For some reason recently I've been really intrigued by this story. I've had this book for a long time. Like, he bought it for my birthday like many years ago, and finally I am, I think, ready to read it. Because it is a children's book, I don't think it's going to be too crazy hard to get through. The chapters are super short. Like I just saw 2 that were like 1 page, and it's Peter Pan. It's like a different retelling of Peter Pan. And the last book that is required for me to read is the E book in this class, and that is a book that is written in past tense. Now, this one was so hard for me to find because most of the books that I have apparently are written in present tense, and so I think I finally found one that works for it. The one that I'm going to be reading is Romanov by Nadine Brains. This one is kind of a retelling of Anastasia, and I love the story of Anastasia. I've only read like the very first like couple sentences in this book, but I'm pretty sure it like still counts as past tense. So this is the one I'm gonna hopefully be able to read for that challenge. And if I have time, I will read the O in this class, and that is to read a book that's been on your TBR forever. And so I'm going to be reading Of Fire and Stars by Audrey Coulthurst. This is one that, like, right when I started my YouTube channel, Emma Books was raving about this book, and it had like come out the year before, and so this was really the first book that like BookTube had made me interested in reading, and so I bought it relatively soon, and it's been on my shelves for years. So I think it's about dang time that I got around to it. This follows a princess who has come to a new town because she is engaged to the prince, but happens to fall in love with the prince's sister. So yeah, those are all of the books that I plan to read this month, and like I said, only 3 of the ones that I showed you are not required, so this is gonna be interesting. So yeah, these are, I can't even show you them all because there are so many of them. These are the books that I'm planning on reading next month, and only 2 of them are paperback, so it's awful to hold them, but there's quite a few here. But yeah, that is it for today. Let me guys know if you are participating in the NEWT Readathon and what you guys are reading and what your career is gonna be. Let me know all that fun stuff down below. I love finding magical friends who like to do these readathons, and I'm so excited. These are like my favorite things to do in the year, and I cannot wait to do it yet again. Thank you guys so much for watching, and subscribe if you want to be part of this awesome family, and I will see you guys in my next video.